Hi there, and welcome back to the History of Fleetwood Mac. I'm Anita. Today we're going to get into part 3 of my books, my Fleetwood Mac books. And I think I'm mostly going to make this hopefully a moderately short video and just kind of focus in on Mick Fleetwood's biography that came out in 1990. I had done a video that I scrapped. I'm trying to be a little bit more coherent in my videos, and also I apologize if it's the 5th, 6th, or 7th time mentioning it, but I've also been on some medications, some kidney stone stuff. So I noticed on one of the last videos, I just kind of went off on I go off on a spacey as it is, but that one it just kind of seemed to dabble on for a bit, and I didn't really mean to. And I just want to be a little bit clear, because also some of the things I said might have kind of come across as kind of weird, and I didn't want that to happen either. This book is, first of all, going to be my favorite so far in the books that I have on Fleetwood Mac, and the books that you're going to find the most information about, the books you're going to get the most out of so far. With that being said, this book is written by Mick Fleetwood and Stephen Davis. Stephen Davis had gone on to write about plenty more other bands and such, not just Fleetwood Mac. And just like with anybody, like if you and I went to a concert and we saw Fleetwood Mac and we left the show and we're each together seeing another friend, and I start recounting how the show went, and then you start recounting how the show went, we're each going to have different views and an outlook as to how that show went, and we're telling the same person, and we are there together, and we're all three sitting there. And I think it's important to, even though it's a biography, to take that kind of information and retain it when you are reading a biography. And the reason I say that is because this was just definitely a big deal when it first came out. This was a problem. You know, it was super spicy, and we all couldn't wait to get our hands on it. But it was really a problem for Mick with Stevie, Mick with Lindsay, Mick with Chris, probably Mick and John. Probably didn't really care so much, but you know. And it's also what a point that I was bringing up is that this book, like I said, came out in I think it was 1990, right? And at this point in our world, we're getting into more of a reality frame of mind where we just want to just unleash the spoils, and how it comes back, don't really care. I'm going to say what I'm going to say, and it's going to come back and either haunt me or it'll get resolved. We don't mind saying stuff that's maybe this is true, but then it kind of escalates a little bit. The big fish, I call it. The fish just keeps getting bigger and bigger in the story. And I think some of what got said maybe is kind of a half truth, maybe a little white lies. And I don't know, wasn't there. I'm not Mick. I'm not Stevie. I'm not Lindsay. I'm not Chris. I'm absolutely nobody. But when I read it, of course, I'm like, oh my God, this is the gospel, and this is what happened because Mick Fleetwood said so. But of course, as I've gotten older and as I've gone on to read other books, and then even when you go so far as to read Mick's book later, this one that comes out later, I'm not going to say his story changed, but things are different. Things are approached and spoken of differently. Maybe not key elements, but maybe that situation just wasn't quite as cuckoo and crazy and out of control as it seemed. And so far, like I said, I'm rereading this, and so far I really enjoy what I'm reading so far about the early stages of Fleetwood Mac. The stories that I'm reading have been most enjoyable because this is from somebody who's directly there. So it's obviously a lot of personal stuff. It's like when I went out to the bar that night, or I went to the recording studio. So it's direct from like me sitting here telling you when I was at that concert in 1986. But I'm also still telling you stuff that happened years ago. And of course, it's not going to be completely perfect. And I'm telling somebody else who's then taking all those notes home and is writing them down with their own version. They're not trying to change the story, but even changing one word can make, as we all know, a big difference in the English language. And I just thought it was really kind of a point to make, and a, how do I say it again without going off too much in the video? We're currently in the grip of a Buckingham Nicks revival, where Rhino's re-releasing the Buckingham Nicks album, and of course everybody was going off on a tangent about Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks getting back together to re-record a tour that they pissed and made up. It's not happening. It's just not a thing. I'm not a shipper. I think their time is gone. I'm happy for any love that they have for each other. But again, it's also none of my business. And I was also thinking to do a video just solely on that, what with kind of revisit my Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks stuff, Buckingham Nicks, but also to pull in all the information that came out about that release, which I might do a video about that next week, kind of soon, before the album actually comes out. But again, back to this book, when we do get into the parts about Stevie and Lindsey having joined the band, there's a lot of secrets that get told. There's a lot of intimate details and personal things. And also, a lot of people read this book and they immediately went away with opinions of both Stevie and Lindsey that have held true 30 plus 40 years later. 30, 90, 2010, 20, 30, 30, almost going on 40 years. And 30 years, I'm sorry. And it still divides camps. It still divides, Team Stevie, Team Lindsey, which is unfortunate. And then, of course, the demise of Fleetwood Mac, even before Christine McVie passed away, losing Lindsey, and the ultimatum, supposedly, that was given. And it all comes back to this book. It just comes back to kind of a feeling that was maybe there from the get-go, how they all felt towards each other as early as this book, that maybe when they went their separate ways, maybe it should have stayed that way in 1990 instead of having the dance. I mean, I live for the dance. I mean, I'm so grateful for the reunion. And that was then. That was from 1990 to 1997. Now, if there had been kind of a reunion, I'd almost be a little, I don't want to say angry, but it would just almost seem like it was all a stunt. And this kind of did too. Of course, again, we didn't look at it back then because this, again, was beginning of like I said, kind of reality talk shows, reality books, more, more bang for your buck as far as what we can throw at you and just, get you all riled up and gloss over some of the other stuff that may or may not have happened, maybe not as important, but just really throw out some just really personal and bad stuff and just and let the chips fall where they may. And Lindsey's album came out afterwards, 1992, and he was directly angry at Mick Fleetwood, and rightfully so. It seems to me like he had every right to be angry. And funny enough, some of the stuff that came out about Stevie, she seemed less angry, but it seemed more potent. It seemed more personal than what came out about Lindsey. And what came out about Lindsey, I don't know. I don't want to give it away in case anybody's read it, but a lot of you know what I'm talking about. And that's also why I want to go back to this book, because I want to know exactly. There are so many different stories on, how Lindsey treated Stevie, and how both Christine and Stevie acted towards Lindsey. And it involves, physical violence, which is such a drastic word. This is a family. if you will, does make none of it okay. But my memory serves a little bit differently how things happen with as far as physical laid hands, who laid hands on who, and I really wanted to go back to read it. And then we got books later, both by Lindsay's ex-girlfriend and Ken Callier, I think is how you say it, then taking from this book and elaborating on it without necessarily eyes in the room. And I don't know if anybody is a David Lynch fan. I'm a huge, huge David Lynch fan. And one of the last biographies that came out on David Lynch was kind of like I just said. David Lynch was approached and they said, here's this story, like let's say Eraserhead. What do you remember about Eraserhead? Specifically, this one chapter in it or something. And David Lynch goes into this whole tangent about it. And say 5 other people were involved in that story. The author then goes to those 5 people and asks the same exact question, and those 5 people remember entirely different, night and day from how David Lynch remembered it. And David Lynch is the director, and it's his movie. Well, it's kind of the same thing with Mick Fleetwood. It's Mick Fleetwood's band. Mick Fleetwood's maybe not his incident, but then you go back and you talk to other people who remembered it, and they're like, no, it didn't happen like that, like at all. Like, I can't believe David Lynch said that. That didn't happen like this. It's kind of funny. It's a very amusing book, and it's also kind of a neat reminder of again what we see, what we hear, what we take in, how we react to it. And for us, when we got this book, it was just about you get a book and you just read it and you react to it how you would. It don't matter in your own home. But when you're a fan and you're going back and you're reviewing books and the story of Fleetwood Mac, it's just always kind of interesting because I remember how I interpreted it, how other people interpreted it, and we still talk about it today. Exact details from this book, like it came out yesterday, but it's been 30 years. And again, he's come out with another book. He's come out with a couple others, but you know what I mean. And maybe that story isn't told exactly the same way it was told in 1990. So, so far of all the books, if I were advising somebody to go on and get a book about the band, who wants to learn about the band from 1966, 67, all the way up until whatever currently was going on, for this one would be 1990. Of course, right now, this is going to be the winner. This is going to have the most information, and it just so happens it's because it's by Mick Fleetwood. It's not until we get into, I don't know, I'll give Ken and Making Rumors some credit that we'll get into much later, because a lot of what Ken talks about in this book is Ken's recollection of being there. And Ken talks more about the recording process and the songs and the, obviously personal things are brought into it. But, Mick Fleetwood talks about everything. Going to the pubs, going to the band rehearsals, people coming in and out of Fleetwood Mac. I mean, it's personal, professional, intimate. It's everything is in this book. So I just want to make, like I said, a little side piece and just really kind of focus on this one. And again, because I'm reading it. And as I'm reading it, like when I go to even make my next video, I hopefully will have read, at least 10, 20 more pages or finished it. Who knows? And so that when I go on to really, review the next book, which will be into the 90s, I'll probably be talking about stuff that happened in this book to pull and relate to that. And what my opinion is at the time of that. So, short video. I just think I tacked this book on and what I'd read so far and what my opinions of it were to another video, and I decided to kind of chop it into and let this book stand out on its own. Again, mostly because I'm rereading it, and because there's so much in it. And again, if you're new to Fleetwood Mac, or you've been into them and you never did pick this book, I do highly advise picking it up. But I will let you know that, again, if you're my age or thereabouts, this is very Jerry Springer, Sally Jesse Raphael, all that. I mean, there are moments where you're just like, who's writing this? I mean, there are writers, and it's almost literally like it's written to be sensational instead of truthful, and it's kind of discouraging. You didn't know that at the time in 1990. You're just like you just felt like you're reading normal biography, but as time has progressed, you're like, there's a little nudge on this, and you know that it's a little bit more sensational than it ought to be. Not again because maybe you knew you were there and like that. You just you'll know what I'm saying. You'll know what I'm talking about. Whereas you read this and it's more in a voice in a time. Even though they're telling a story from a long time ago, it's a more modern voice because it's being told in a modern time and what's around us and stuff. So I hope that all makes sense, and I hope you enjoyed this video and took it for what it was. And like I said, I'll be bringing this up more often, but let me know if you're reading it now, if you're interested in reading it, if you got it back then, what you thought. Um, do you still, when's the last time you read it? Or like when you read it, did you just take it as the gospel? That's it. And that's what I think about Stevie Lindsay. Oh my goodness, this happened and that was that. It could have possibly happened any other way. What are your opinions of it? I would like to know. So thank you again for joining me, and I hope you have a great night. And we'll see you next time. Bye.